The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Welcome into a brand new edition of the Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball Show. And some say a day late and a dollar short. Well, we are a day late. I guess
hopefully our wallets are secure. So,
well, we're excited. We are a day later than normal, simply because, well, schedules, that's the way they work. But we're excited today. We got a huge show planned for you. We're talking first baseman in the latter part of the show, ranking those. Last week, if you missed it, we did rank catchers, and so you can go back and tune into that one. And we're also talking about bounce backs this week and all the latest Major League Baseball news. And what I'm really excited about is next week we're getting into our team previews. So that's going to be exciting as well. But anyways, this week we got plenty to talk about. I'm Vince Stover. I'm joined as I am every week by the one and only Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kev, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Vince, and we're warming up a little bit around here. So, and I tried to keep my excitement under control because we had to wait an extra day for baseball, and I'm always ready to talk baseball. So I am absolutely glad that we are getting around to it, and I'm looking forward to what we are going to talk about tonight because we've got some subjects to discuss.
Definitely. Yeah. And I know, I was up north this week and preparing for a move. And when I left Kentucky, there was snow-covered grounds. Driving up, we had no snow until we hit about Chicago, and we started to get snow. Then we return home today, and most of the snow is melted, and it's a wonderful thing for sure. And I saw some baseball practice pictures from Florida of teams out there in the snow and all that kind of stuff this week too.
I saw that as well.
It's a wild time to be alive for sure. But we're here to talk fantasy baseball. Mostly we will get to some Major League Baseball news in a minute. But first, let's start off with our opening segment, the Fantasy Burner. The Fantasy Burner segment is presented by Belly Up Sports. Of course, you can catch all kinds of sport news and opinions on bellyupsports.com, including all of Kevin Wilson's fantasy articles are there also. So check it out, bellyupsports.com. And last week we looked at guys that we feel we're going to drop off this year from last year. This week we're going to point out some of our bounce backs, some guys that we think are going to have a step forward versus backwards this year. And I'm interested to hear your list, Kevin. So why don't you open us up with your first person you have as a bounce back?
Okay, so I know I had his name wrong last year, so I'm going to try and do better. Because my first bounce back that I have is, I believe, Isaac Paredes. Isaac. See, I'm still getting it wrong. Okay. All right, so he was on Tampa Bay first last year, and in 101 games, he hit 16 homers and 55 RBIs. He got traded to the Cubs, and we all know about the curse that was going on out there last year. But in 52 games, he hit just three homers and 25 RBIs, so he disappeared. And the reason why, other than the curse, is because Tropicana Field was tailor-made for his swing. Wrigley Field was not. But he's now in Houston, and their left field porch is once again tailor-made for his swing because he's a pull hitter. And so I expect that he's going to rebound to what we've seen before because he's had 31 homers. He has 98 RBIs in his career. I see that as being pretty much his floor right there in Houston. And if he does that, and he's disappeared from the ADP pretty much going into draft season, which is open on ESPN, by the way, finally. Okay. But so I see him as being a huge bounce back candidate. And so I am really looking forward to what he can put together down there in Houston.
I like that one too. Yeah, he's obviously a talented player.
He's only 25. I didn't throw that
Yes,
in there yet.
very
So
young as well. You're right. And so, yeah, great opportunity there for him, and anticipate seeing him make some steps forward, no doubt. I'm going to go with a guy who is 32 this season. Last year, he was coming off an injury year where he did not play at all, and he was in a new club as well. And so I'm talking about Rhys Hoskins, first baseman of the Milwaukee Brewers. Obviously, in 2022, he had his best year. He was a 3.0 WAR. He had 20 or 30 home runs in that season as well. He has the injury. 2023 does not play at all. 2024 he comes back, and at Milwaukee, he only hit 214. He had 26 home runs and 82 RBIs, which really was kind of his. Those numbers weren't horrible. They were around his average and things of that nature. But he only played in 131 games, and he was, for the first time in his career, a negative WAR, which I know fantasy-wise doesn't really matter, but important, I think, to note at the very least. He also had 53 walks, which was his third highest in his career last year. And so I look at Rhys Hoskins and I go, okay, 131 games played last year when the Brewers had this rotation of guys between first base and DH and catcher that were kind of all mingled around. I think this year he's going to get back up to that 150 game area. And if his numbers, his home run numbers and his RBI numbers and his walk numbers stay positive, well, then they're going to be 20 games higher than they were last year. And then you throw in the batting average at 214 last year. I think it's going to get better this year as well. A full year back, a full off season of recovery, all that good stuff as well. I think Rhys Hoskins is going to be sniffing at the top 10 of first baseman by the end of the fantasy season. I see him maybe in that 13 to 14 rank range right now, but I think he could sniff that top 10 in points this year just based off of games played alone. And the rotation is going to be different in Milwaukee this year. The first base rotation is going to be different. He's going to get a lot more at bats. He's going to play a lot more, I think, this year, as long as he stays healthy. And I think that if those home run numbers, walk numbers, RBI numbers are where they were last year, just averaged out to 150 games, they're going to be a fair amount higher, and therefore he's going to be a better fantasy option this year. So I think Rhys Hoskins makes his bounce back this year as well.
Okay, so that would certainly help out your team if that was to be the case. And so my second guy, I went young with the first one, 25. I'm even going younger with this selection, and he's right up the street from me. And I'm talking about Evan Carter of the Texas Rangers, nice. Who entering last year was one of the top prospects in baseball, if not the top prospect, because he came off an outstanding postseason and a World Series and had big hits for them when the Rangers won. Well, last year he had injuries. He had a stress reaction to his back, which sounds very ominous. Mm-hmm. But he only played in 44 games. So you can imagine his stats are nowhere to be found anywhere. And so there's no sense even looking that up. Okay. And he's fallen completely off the draft radar. And even in our league, which goes longer than a lot of them do, you could get him off the waiver wire, perhaps, maybe the last pick of the draft. If you have the last pick and he's still available, I would take an option on him because he is an outstanding hitter. He's a left-handed hitter. So there's a lot to like about him. So he is a value. I see him as a value right now. So if he has a season that he's capable of having, and the Rangers are going to bounce back from the awful offensive season they had a year ago. So I really like Evan Carter to produce some quality numbers going into this year.
I like that one. I think the Rangers are going to be a team on the rise this year. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks when we get to the AL West. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to seeing more of him for sure and seeing what he could put together, especially for fantasy teams this coming season. Kevin, I'm going to go with a guy now that is making a change to a new ballpark, and I think it's going to help him out. And it's a guy that you've seen play a fair amount, and it is Gavin Lux. And he makes the move to Cincinnati this year. He hit 251 last year. That's not bad. 10 home runs. That's the best he's had in his career. 50 RBIs and 5 stolen bases. And again, I look at that and go, okay, in 139 games last year, He had a career high in home runs, a career high in RBIs, and a second best steal year he's had. Second best walks year that he's had as well. He did strike out a lot as well there in Los Angeles last year. He moves to Cincinnati, where the spotlight is very different. The attention that Cincinnati is going to get is very different than the attention that the Dodgers are going to get. The fan base is very different in Cincinnati than it is out in LA as well. And Gavin Lux is this guy who has this loads of potential. He's been looked at for years now as this young guy that's going to step up and fill a void and whatever it may be. And he's never really met that potential just yet. And I really feel like this year, this change of scenery is a big opportunity for Gavin Lux. The numbers last year compared to his previous numbers, not bad. But when you look at if he just gets a full season in, his average really comes out to about 11 home runs, 61 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, and 57 walks. And so he's not too far from that. But his fantasy relevance right now really hasn't been there. He's been a late draft guy. He's been maybe even a waiver wire pickup throughout the season. A guy that's on rosters, off rosters, whatever it may be. I really think that in Cincinnati, he's going to have an opportunity to be fantasy relevant all season long, where he won't be coming on and off of rosters, but he'll be someone that locks in. He's not going to be your top second baseman. I don't think he's going to come in and all of a sudden just, blow the roof off, but I think he's going to be a fantasy relevant second baseman consistently for really the first time in his baseball career. So I put him in my bounce backs for 2025.
Okay. And plus, hitting in Cincinnati is a whole different scenario than in LA, because LA is a pitcher's park, always has been. Cincinnati is a hitter's park. So
right.
All right. So my last hitter that I'm going to bring up happens to play for the Atlanta Braves. Now, I realize we could speak about plenty of Atlanta Braves players in this scenario right here, but the guy I'm going to go with is the one that I drafted a year ago, and that's third baseman Austin Riley. And so he had a bad start, okay? Yeah. And he had an oblique injury that he didn't play for 2 weeks plus, but the Braves didn't put him on the IL, which frustrated me to no end because I had nowhere to go with him at all. But then he got it together. His exit velocity and everything else were about the same even when he was hurt. But then he came back in. He hit 3 home runs in June. And then from there on out, he was on a 45 home run pace for a season. But then his season ended in August because he had a right hand fracture. Well, that's because he got hit by a pitch, so you can't blame him for that. So he's going to have a full, off season to get himself healthy. We all know what he's capable of. And so when it comes to third baseman, which we'll get into those rankings here, pretty soon, but I see him as a guy that the whole Atlanta Braves, as I mentioned, will bounce back. And so their offense was one of the best, and it slid backwards as you would expect because they had all these guys that were hurt and everything else, but they're going to be back. So I like Austin Riley to get back to where he was. And so if his ADP stays where it currently is, he could be a tremendous value at third base.
Yeah, I didn't put him on my list because I assumed he was going to be on your list. And I love it. I mean, I do. Austin Riley's this guy who last year was 330 points behind the top third baseman in fantasy baseball. And that sounds horrible, right? But then when you look at it, you realize, well, the second place third baseman was 200 points behind the top third baseman last season. So, and that was Jose Ramirez. So, listen, Riley should be a top 3 third baseman. That's his talent level. That's where he's supposed to be. And that's where he was drafted at last year. He didn't come close to it. And the reality is he's going to have a bounce back this year, or it's going to be a bad news for the Braves. So I agree with you, though. I think he will bounce back. I think it'll be a situation where he steps up. I think we'll see him in the top 5 of third baseman again this year. And I'm excited to see how he bounces back this year. So I do like that one a lot, Kevin, for sure. I'm going to stick with third base for my next one, and but this is another young guy that we really liked. At least I did. I think you did. I don't remember, but I think you did last year as well. He'd be 26 this year. It's third baseman Rhys Lewis from the Minnesota Twins, and he came off of 2023 with a flash. We thought, oh, this kid, he's going to be something really, really good. He's young. He's going to come out here. He's going to rake. And in 2024, he wasn't horrible, but it wasn't good either. It wasn't where I thought he was going to be for sure. He did play in 82 games, and that was all in Minnesota. He had a little bit of an injury-ridden year as well. He did get 16 home runs, 47 RBIs, 28 walks, and 74 strikeouts in 82 games, hitting 233 last year. So I look at Rhys Lewis. I look at the talent that he has, kind of like Gavin Lux, but I think he has a much higher ceiling than Gavin Lux does. And I think that Rhys Lewis is going to have that breakout year this year that we expected from him last year. I see him hitting in the mid-20s at least for home runs. I think he'll be over 100 RBIs this season. And the big thing is going to be strikeouts. What can he do strikeout-wise? But I think he'll hit in that 250 range as well. So Rhys Lewis is a guy, young, super talented, had all kinds of issues last year, but he's due for a breakout, I think, just with his talent level. And Rhys Lewis is a guy that I think is going to be a real get at third base this year.
Okay, so health has always been his thing. So if he solves that, top 5, easy. All right, so I'm going to switch over to the mound on this next one, and I'm going to go with the Cincinnati pitcher. That may sound a little crazy given what we just talked about, but the guy I'm talking about is Nick Lodolo.
Yeah.
All right, and so he entered June with a 2.76 ERA, all right, a 26.1% strikeout rate. Then he had an injury to his middle finger. He returned, and his ERA ballooned to 7.54 and a 24.3% strikeout rate. So it was awful. And fortunately for him, he's had an off season to get himself 100% healthy. And if you're looking for a guy to fill in the back of your rotation, he's a guy that I could see you take a chance on him late in the draft. A 2.76 ERA in Cincinnati is something to take notice of. So I really like him as a value going into this year. And so if you get a chance to draft him late, I would do so.
I love this. I love Nick Lodolo. I think that he is, I was going to say, the second best pitcher in Cincinnati this year. They did bring in Brady Singer. And depending on the year that he has, but I think Lodolo doesn't have that pressure that maybe he had coming into last year. The anticipation, the expectation is not the same. Hunter Green's still there to kind of take all the attention. Singer's the new arm there. I love Nick Lodolo. He's a guy I'm kind of targeting in my drafts this year because I think he's going to have a bounce back year as well, Kevin. I'm with you on that one. Give us another guy. Who else you got?
Okay, so this next guy is probably going to be a surprise. And this is for those that have save or holds rather as a category. And all leagues should have that. It's a legitimate category. And so, but my guy is one that just showed up on the Cleveland Guardians' doorstep. And that's Paul Sewald.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. He crash landed in a major way down there in Arizona. And so that was we're gonna wipe that away, and look what he did in Seattle. He had a 3.06 ERA, 2.67, and 2.93 were his 3 ERAs in Seattle. And so he's gonna go in there and set up as the guy that's gonna get ready for Emmanuel Clase. And I really like him in that role. I think he's going to excel. And but like I said, if your league doesn't have holds as a category, this will not help you one iota. But if you do have it, I would look for him as being a possible late addition to your bullpen. And somebody pointed out, because I put this out into the stratosphere, if you will, and people were like, "Well, he may not even be the ninth or seventh inning guy." I think he will, but even if he's not, a hold is a hold is a hold. So I'd like him in that situation. I think he is going to have a good season next year. So as a bounce back candidate, they aren't getting any better to me than Paul Sewald is in Cleveland.
Yeah, I like that one too, Kevin. I think I'm a fan of Sewald, and I think everything will depend on his spot, right? Where he's going to sit at. But I think you're right. I think he'll be a setup guy, their eighth inning guy, especially, and maybe even he'll snag a few saves here and there as well throughout the season. And you never know injury wise what's going to happen if Clase goes down. Boom, you got a guy right there that can step in too. So I like that one. All right, Kevin, I'm going to give you a guy that you're going to roll your eyes at. You're going
Okay.
to say, Vince, just let it
Okay.
go.
I'm sitting back, so lay it on me.
You're going to be, you will not agree with me on this one. And that's perfectly fine. I'm okay with being right on my own island.
Okay.
This is a guy who once held great fantasy value because he was an everyday outfielder with catcher eligibility. Then he fell off the face of the earth fantasy wise in Kansas City. Last year, MJ Melendez hit 206, 17 home runs, 44 RBIs, and only 4 stolen bases. And I know that I am the only person in this world who still believes in MJ Melendez. But I do. I think Kansas City is a really good team. I think they're going to be better again this year. I think that he is a guy who has too much talent to just fade away into non-existence. Now, if you look at his career so far in the 3 full seasons that he's played, he got really good in 2023, or the best that he's had as far as total stats go was 2023. But 2022 is the year that got him on the picture. Got his name up there to see. He had 18 home runs. He dropped that to 16 and 23, 17 and 24. He's hanging right around that area. RBIs have dipped since 22. And stolen bases are around the same as well. Batting average has got okay in 23 at 236, but bad again last year at 206. So what do I expect out of MJ Melendez? Here's what I expect out of a breakout year, a massive bounce back for MJ Melendez. For the first time in his career, he'll hit 20 home runs. For the first time in his career, he'll hit 70 RBIs. For the first time in his career, he's going to get you 8 stolen bases. And with that all being said, his batting average, it's still not going to be great. So if you're in a categories league, you got to watch out for that. I expect him in the 220s, the 230 range at batting average as well. Again, this is not going to be a high pick. This is not a guy you're going after early in the draft. This is a guy late in the draft, towards the end of the draft, that you're going to look at. He only has outfield eligibility, so there's no reason, you don't get that catcher love just like last season. You didn't either. Listen, Melendez, it's just take it as a hunch. So take it or leave it. You don't have to believe me. It's perfectly fine. He'll be on my team. And I will put my money where my mouth is. And I believe in MJ Melendez this year. I think we're going to see him take a step forward. Again, won't be great, but he's going to take a step forward this year. Another young guy with all kinds of talent. He'll be 26 this year, Kevin. And I think that's when we start to see him really step into his own.
Okay, so all I'll say about that is that I'm going to keep my toes firmly in the boat when it comes to him. There won't be any testing of the waters. So you'll have no resistance from me because, as you know, you and I have both tried him in various forms in fantasy. So I'm staying in the boat. I'll let you swim out and get him and bring him back. So I not rolling my eyes, but I'm just going to say I'm out on him.
All right. Who's your last one?
The last one is a pitcher who won just 5 games a year ago, and that's because he only made 13 starts because of a shoulder injury. And so I'm going down to Arizona, and I really like what Arizona's doing. But he's not the number 1 or number 2. Maybe even he's not the number 3, but I suspect he will be, and that's Morel Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So he had, like I said, he had just 5 wins a year ago. But in 2023, he started 30 games. He was 12-8 with a 3.29 ERA. In 2022, he started 33 games. He was 13-8 with a 3.37 ERA. So he's got the track record. He is an outstanding pitcher, and he was healthy for the final 2 months of the season and looked pretty good. So he's got an off season going for him this year. He'll enter spring healthy. So as a late guy, he is somebody that I really like, and I think that he'll thrive in that number 3 position down there in Arizona. So I really like what he could put together for you in your starting rotation in fantasy.
Yeah, I think you might find a couple names on that Arizona rotation to have bounce backs this year. Honestly, I think there's potential for it. They're set up nicely in that rotation right now.
They are.
In Arizona. I like it. All right, that's our fantasy burner segment talking about bounce backs for this year, presented by bellyupsports.com. Let's head to segment number 2. We got some MLB news to talk about on the Hot Corner. The Hot Corner is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Use the code BELLYUP at checkout at righteousfelon.com. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. All right, Kevin, let's start off by talking about the Hall of Fame. 3 new inductees, specifically to this year. Of course, there's a couple on the classic era as well. But Ichiro Suzuki, 1 vote shy of unanimous. That's ridiculous. CC Sabathia and Billy Wagner are the ones that make it in. Your thoughts on those 3 guys, and did anybody get left off?
Well, those 3 guys that you mentioned are the same exact 3 guys. When we talked about this, what was that, a few months ago?
Mm-hmm.
Or a month, whatever, however long that ago was when we talked about forecasting the Hall of Fame. Those are the 3 guys that I thought must get their invitations to the Hall of Fame. And so I was quite pleased with that. I still don't understand how this thing about we can't have unanimous selection and how they all plan this out where 1 guy. And it's interesting to me that they don't ever announce who this 1 guy was. I can say for absolute certainty that it was not a guy from the local, because he in the Dallas Morning News, he puts out who he voted for and why he voted for him. So it wasn't him.
Yeah.
So I don't know who it was, but so that I agree with you. That's ridiculous that he was not a unanimous player, but he's in. And CC Sabathia, we talked about him as being only the 3rd left-hander with 250 wins or more and 3,000 strikeouts. So he should have been in. And Billy Wagner, I thought, was one of the, talk about closers. He was one of the clutch closers we've seen. So I thought he should have been there. Maybe before this year he's in. And as far as the left off, you turned me around when we were discussing this before when it came to Andrew Jones.
Yeah.
Because when we talked about this, I was like, well, I don't know if he's Hall of Fame worthy. But then I looked into it, and there were a few center fielders that could play defense as well as him. Not a lot, but there were a few. But none of them had the offensive power that he did for so long. So I think that he should be in. I think he will get in, especially next year, because there is nobody that's coming up for first-time enshrinement next year that you have to get into the Hall of Fame. So I think he'll be in. He should be in. And you can make an argument that he should have been in this year, but I think he will be, and so he belongs.
Yeah, Andrew Jones is his 8th year on the ballot, so he's running out of time. But he did go up. He got 66%, 261 votes. Carlos Beltran fell just short. He's at 70% with 277 votes. So you look there and you see 2 first ballot guys, and CC and Ichiro go in, which to me were so clearly Hall of Fame guys. Ichiro should have been unanimous. There's just no excuse for it, in my opinion, at the very least. None of the steroid guys are getting any closer. I mean, it's just it's been set that whatever. A few guys got less than 5%, so they're off future ballots. Ian Kinsler makes sense. Russell Martin, Brian McCann, Troy
A lot of those guys,
Tulowitzki.
you feel bad for them because going in that they have zero shot at it, and so why put them through all of that?
Troy Tulowitzki, I'm a little surprised. He got 4 votes. I'm surprised he got less votes than Ian Kinsler, honestly. He had a stretch there where he was the guy in the middle. I'm not surprised that he fell short of 5%, though. Hanley Ramirez, 0 votes. Fernando Rodney, 0 votes. Ben Zobrist, 0 votes as well. So there you go. A few guys that aren't going to be around on the ballot. That being said, we do have a few more guys signed since our last program. Jurickson Profar goes to the Braves. I like that addition for the Braves.
I do too.
The Cubs in Houston continue to deal. Ryan Presley heads over to the Cubs. And then the Orioles sign outfielder Dylan Carlson. Sneaky good signing, I think, there for Baltimore. He's not going to blow the roof off. He's not going to be the star there. But talking about depth, and I like that signing for Baltimore. But let's go back to the Profar and the Braves, because I think that's a really good signing for Atlanta.
I do as well, and he's a guy who we talked about it at the last show we did for last year, and he was on my list of fantasy all-stars because he came off the waiver wire and then wound up starting in the all-star game, and so I like that a lot in Atlanta. So I get in that lineup, like we just talked about him, bounce back years all the way around. So he's going to have a ton of opportunities to score and drive in runs in Atlanta.
Yeah, because you look at this team: Sean Murphy, Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Orlando Arcia, Austin Riley, Profar, Harris, and Acuna when healthy. Then they added Brian De La Cruz, Jared Kelenic there as well. Like they're restocked pretty nicely. So even if they have injuries, they got some people there that can fill in and play. And I really like what Atlanta's done so far. But Kevin, there's 2 big free agents still out there, guys that are now we see Alec Bregman is talking to Houston again. Now that's interesting. Pete Alonso, he's out here left in the cold like a polar bear. He doesn't know what to do. And so you look at these 2 guys and you're saying, okay, they want big bucks. It's starting to look like maybe they're going to have to do what, we saw a few pitchers do last year and maybe take one of those 1 year, $18 million or $20 million or $25 million, whatever deal, and then enter free agency again the following year, because Bregman and Alonso, 2 incredibly good players. They can both come to Milwaukee for all I care. But they're just not finding what they want when they went out there to really go after free agency.
No, they sure not. And it's interesting about Pete Alonso, and the Mets just had some kind of off season. I guess they do it, and the Rangers do it down here, and get everybody hyped up. But everybody was booing the Mets general manager and the owner, and the owner spent like $87.8 billion or whatever it is on the Mets, and they're still not happy with that. But I put that right at Pete Alonso's door. He thinks he's the top first baseman in all of baseball, and that's not happening. And so he hasn't softened his stance, but that's not surprising given who his agent is. And Bregman is the interesting one because he had an interesting year to have a down year. You don't want that to happen when you're going into your walk year and free agency. But I still think that he can provide. I don't know what what is he asking for? And so, but it's not as ridiculous as Pete Alonso is. So, but apparently he's asking for too much. So,
yeah, I mean, he turned down the initial offer in Houston, and then Houston moved on.
And
then here we sit going.
That's when they went and got Isaac. So
yeah, and so then you're sitting here going, okay, well now what? And there's not a lot of teams wanting to spend. There's no teams wanting to spend that kind of money on a third baseman. or really a first baseman as apparent as well. So I'm interested to see what happens. Do you have a solution? Do you think that these guys are going to re-sign with their old teams, or do you see another team going to pop in here and finally give them something at least close enough to what they want?
Well, you hear Toronto's name gets thrown around an awful lot. I've heard it with both of these guys. And as far as Alonso and Toronto, I know they were talking about possibly moving Vladimir Guerrero to third. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. When you've got an all-star and he got back up there. He'll never be what we thought Vladimir Guerrero might be, but he's good enough, and I would leave him alone in Toronto. If they wanted to do either, I would go get Bregman before I would go get Pete Alonso if I'm Toronto Blue Jays. And so I would not be surprised if Bregman winds up there. And then Alonso, I don't know what the answer is for him, because he's made things ugly now. And so I know it's a joke, going on, that if the Dodgers don't give you an offer, I don't know what to tell you. So,
yeah, it's going to be weird. I mean, Toronto makes sense for at least one of these guys. They've been wanting to spend the money. They're going to lose people this offseason. It makes sense. There's just not. I mean, San Francisco, I thought, made some sense, especially for Alonso. Doesn't seem like there's enough interest there. I don't know. Maybe the Rangers jump in there and go get somebody as well. I mean, there are good teams. They're very limited right now for these two guys. There's bad teams, but good teams. What about Seattle? Seattle's a team again that could pop up and do something too. So.
Well, it seems like they're allergic to hitters apparently up there in Seattle.
Right. Yes, for sure.
If you're a pitcher, come on down. But if you're a hitter, then stay away from Seattle, because they're not throwing their line in to catch anybody. It doesn't seem like so, which is too bad, because their pitching staff matches up with anyone's. Yeah, and so all they need is 4 runs. And they'd be right there. So I'm not sure what's going on up there in Seattle.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to discuss before we head to our rankings?
No, I think that pretty much takes it. I think, the one up in Chicago, I think that's Presley. And I think that he took real exception to win in Houston, because he was the closer, and all of a sudden then he wasn't. And so, I don't think that he had his mind right last year, so maybe going to Chicago will be a good thing for him.
I hate to see it, but yeah, I agree with you on that one as well. All right, join the flavor revolution at righteousfelon.com. Use code BELLYUP at checkout. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. Let's head to our final segment of the show, first baseman rankings and our fantasy focus. Our fantasy focus is presented by SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com. Use the promo code BellyUpSports. You get $20 off your first purchase. We are ranking first baseman this week, and I am really intrigued to see what we got the same and what we got different, because I'm guessing our bottom part of the rankings are probably different, just like last week's catchers. But let's get into it. Let's start at the top. And I want you to give me your top 3, because I'm assuming we're going to have the same 3, maybe in a different order, but I'm interested. So who's your top 3?
So my top 3 is, we just mentioned him. Vladimir Guerrero starts at the top of any first base rankings. And then I got to go with my, team, Freddie Freeman in the number 2 spot. And then Bryce Harper slides in at number 3 up there in Philadelphia. So I got Guerrero, Freeman, and Harper as my 1, 2, 3.
Exactly the same. I think these are pretty simple. There will be people who will flip Harper and Freeman. I do not. I trust Freeman more.
I do too.
And Vlad is that guy that I feel like last year he was really good, and we didn't even realize it when it was happening. Fantasy wise, really good. And yeah, he's got to be at the top. I like Freeman 2. I like Harper 3. I'm with you on these three, and I don't think there's a whole lot to discuss on these guys. They are what they are. We know what they are. So let's move to number 4. Who do you have at number 4?
Number 4, I'm going to put Matt Olson in this slot.
Okay.
And he's a guy who has the capability of possibly moving himself up to number 2 when it's all said and done. He's got the ability, and he's another one of those guys in Atlanta. I could have talked about him in the bounce back session. And so 29 homers, 90 RBIs, nothing to get excited about, even at first base. But he had 54 home runs a year before that.
Yeah.
And so I don't see him taking any more steps back. I know he's 30, so he's not ancient by any means. So I see him, and like I mentioned, Atlanta taking a major step forward this year. So I have him at number 4.
Interesting. I have Matt Olson at number 7.
Okay.
I'm not a believer in him bouncing back to his old form. Now, the Braves as a whole should be better if they can all stay healthy. That will definitely help him. So I don't think he's going to fall off the map. I think at 7, he's still valuable in fantasy, but I'm probably not willing to draft Matt Olson where most other people are. I'm a little bit more skeptical of him this year, and I got guys I like just a lot better than him. And so I do not have him that high. I'll give you my list in a moment. Who's number 5 for you?
Number 5 might be a surprise, but I've got Christian Walker in this slot. I like him going into Houston. I know Arizona was a great offensive lineup, but I like Houston as well. I know he's 33 years old, but he's a guy that averages 30 homers, almost 100 RBIs. And so he played in 160 and 157 games in his previous 2 years. So 33 home runs. All right. So I really like what he can do in that Houston lineup. And the reason why I have him ranked here is because, we talked about Pete Alonso a moment ago. He was the hardest guy for me to rank in this. So I'm sliding Christian Walker ahead of him into the number 5 slot.
Okay, so I love Christian Walker. I'm a believer in Christian Walker, and sadly, with him going to Houston, it's moving his draft stock up, and I don't like it. I want it to stay down where it was. I don't know what you have. I've got his ADP at 78.8. That's across the few different platforms. And I like Christian Walker. I don't love drafting him ahead of some other guys. I like him being a value pick, and he's no longer a value pick at first base. But I do love him. I have him at number 6 though, Kevin. And let me give you my 4 and 5 right now. I've got Pete Alonso at 4. Now, I know he doesn't have a team. I know we don't know where he's going to be hitting at. Somebody's going to sign him. He's going to play baseball, and he's going to do it very, very well. It's not like the pitchers last year that didn't get out there throwing, and then when they finally got signed, they just couldn't get to it. Pete Alonso will be ready to go. And so I've got him at 4, and I've got Josh Naylor at 5, the replacement for Christian Walker in Arizona. And I'm excited to see what he can do out there in Arizona. I like him a lot in that spot. I've got him just ahead of Christian Walker. If it came down to drafting Naylor or Walker, I have more history with Walker. So me personally, I'd probably draft Walker, but I think that the stats and looking at the spot that they're in, the lineup they're hitting in, all that kind of stuff, I just think Naylor's a little bit better this year than Christian Walker. So I went Alonso 4, Naylor 5, Walker 6, and Olson 7. Who do you have at your 6 and 7 spot?
So the number 6 guy I have is Pete Alonso. We just talked about him. And the reason why I have him is no team. Don't know what kind of situation he's going to be in. And I know he plays in games, and that's all great. But even when he hit 46 home runs, he only hit 217. And so 172 strikeouts. And we're in a points league, and that's a negative. 172 points gets removed from his, statistics. And so he's got power. And if he would just sign a contract already, like I said, he'd be probably at least number 5 at maybe 4. So Josh Naylor, I got him at number 7. I really like him as well. I think he's going to do well in Arizona. And I have these guys ranked as far as fantasy. I don't have them ranked as far as, because I think Josh Naylor is going to be a bigger value as well over Walker, given where he's going to get drafted. But if you wind up with Josh Naylor on your team, I think you would be very happy to have that.
I agree. So now I'm intrigued. 8, 9, and 10 is going to be interesting, I think. I assume I've got Spencer Steer at 8. I'm assuming we both have Spencer Steer on our list, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I've got him at 8, the Cincinnati first baseman. He also has, I believe, outfield eligibility. Does he have third base? I can't remember. I didn't look it
No,
up
he does not.
Okay.
He does not.
I
Too bad.
love,
If he did, he would really blow the doors off.
yeah, I love Spencer Steer, and there's a couple Reds. You know me, I'm an anti-Red guy. I think the fan base has been tortured over the years, and I just think they're just destined to fail. But that being said, there's a few Reds I really like this year. Spencer Steer is one of the top Reds on my list. I really like him. He gives you a little bit of flexibility as far as position goes, with having that outfield eligibility as well. I just think he's gonna be really good. I think the Reds offense should be good this year, and Spencer Steer is going to be a big part of that if they are. So I love him. I've got him at 8. I'll go ahead and give you my 9 and 10 also, and then we'll let you give your final 3 as well. I've got at 9 Luis Reyes out in San Diego. This is a guy in a points league I have a hard time drafting. Categories leagues, I'm all for it. He gives you the batting average. He gives you some good things there as well. He's going to be a top 10 scorer in fantasy and scoring leagues as well. But I feel like I can get better value than Luis Reyes at places. But stats wise, he belongs here. I put him at number 9. And then my number 10 guy is a guy that I really banked on last year and he let me down. I should have put him in my bounce backs. But Vinny Pasquantino in Kansas City, again, he's young. He has power. He can do a lot. I think Kansas City is going to be good. And I think he'll be back up there where he needs to be there. So I got Spencer Steer 8, Luis Reyes at 9, and Vinny Pasquantino at 10.
Okay, so we're walking lockstep when it comes to Pasquantino, because I got him in the number 8 spot.
Okay.
And I think that he hasn't put it together, but he's only 27. I think that's coming. And then Spencer Steer slides right in there to the number 10. And the number 10 spot, we talked earlier about, I might be, you were on a boat of your own. I might be in one of my own on this one, but I've got Jake Berger of the Texas Rangers in the number 10 slot. And so he's got first base. He's got third base. So that increases his value. And he's going to be hitting in that Texas Rangers lineup. We talked about that earlier. I really like what they're going to do. And he's going to be playing. They've cleared first base for him. He'll also, when he's not playing first, be a DH. So I think he's going to play 155 plus games. So I really like what he can do. He's escaped Miami. So I really like Jake Berger, what he can do this year. And as the value, it's through the roof as far as I'm concerned.
At the number 10 spot. That's surprising to me. I think he has value. I think he's going to be fantasy relevant, all those good things. Again, that positional eligibility, I cannot put him that high. I will not roll my eyes because you didn't roll your eyes at my Melendez thing, and you're putting him at 10 is far more reasonable than me putting Melendez as a bounce back. So I'll give that to you. Give that one to you for sure. So let's talk through these values, and then I've got some guys that they don't come up in the values I want to come back to as well. So let's start with the best value. First baseman, best value. Who do you have sitting in that spot?
The best value I have of all these guys is probably Josh Naylor. I really like the value. I really like where you can get him and have him in your lineup. So when it comes to value with these guys, I really like what he can do. Christian Walker, I like him a lot, but as you mentioned, he's going to take a major step forward as far as getting drafted this year. So that cools the waters for me. And I got Jake Berger at number 10, so I've got to include him in my value picks right here. So those are two guys I have out of my top 10 that I think will be values. I do have one player here that I think that's going to be going up. He's on the escalator up. So I think maybe he might be the biggest value of them all.
Who's that?
That would be Tristan Casas of the Boston Red Sox.
Okay, good. Yeah,
Okay.
because he's one of the ones I wanted to talk about. I had Casas in my top 10, and I bumped him out. I just felt like now there's too much here with Arias and Pasquantino to put him in that spot. But I'm with you. I think Casas is going to continue to rise. He is. Do you have his ADP?
I do not.
Fantasy Pros has him at 101.8 right now.
Not quite the value I would have thought maybe he would be there.
There's some as high as 81, others as low as 111. So
he's really on the rise then.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of talk about him right now. When I look at best values, I'll talk about the guy I talked about having a bounce back this year in Rhys Hoskins. He's right now at 247. He's being undrafted in some leagues. And actually in a lot of leagues, he's being undrafted right now. And I think you get Rhys Hoskins in the last 3 rounds of the draft, and you've got yourself a solid corner infielder right there. I like that value a ton. Michael Busch at Chicago, I like as well, 263. So he's basically going undrafted in many leagues also. And then to give someone a little bit more higher up, I guess, as well. Oh no, I lost him. I forgot. I forgot to check ESPN on this one. Is Isaac Paredes still qualified in first base?
I can do some real-time research while we're
I know he is in some leagues, and I forgot to check ESPN before. I was traveling all day today, so I forgot to get.
I can answer you on that one.
If he is, he's being drafted 197 right now, which would be a steal if he's got multiple position eligibility there on ESPN. And whatever league you're in, if he's got multiple eligibility, there's a good value pick for you.
All right,
Kevin's still looking.
I'm still checking.
Just like he's checking online for this info, you can go online to SeatGeek.com. Get yourself some baseball tickets for the upcoming season. Use the code BellyUpSports to get $20 off your purchase. Any luck there, Kev?
Okay, so we were talking about Spencer Steer. He's got outfield first, so no third on him.
The silence is deafening.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, if you're in an ESPN league, check it out. See if Isaac Paredes is there or not, and then you can have fun with him. Get him on a great value as well. Let's see here. No, he's only third base eligible on ESPN. So if you're in other leagues, check it out. Maybe if you're on Yahoo or something like that, he gives you some first base eligibility as well. All right, Kev, let's go worst value first baseman.
I've got a guy that I'm sorry to sound the deaf, funeral, song for him, but that's Paul Goldschmidt. This guy to me he's undraftable to me. He's on New York, and maybe that could give him some boost, but New York is not a place for a right-hand hitter like he is. And because if you're a left-hand hitter, you can take shots at that short porch, but left field is Death Valley days in New York. So he's 37, and his stats have been taken a walk down the wrong aisle since 2022. That when he hit 35 home runs and 115 RBIs, that's taking step backs every year. So as far as guys sliding off the mound, he's doing it quick, and I cannot see him in any way, shape, or form being anywhere close to a roster I've put together.
Yeah, I'm not drafting Paul Goldschmidt. He's at 155 ADP right now, as high as 137, as low as 178. I can't draft him, and I'm hoping we have Yankees fans in our leagues that will draft him because I'm not doing it. If I'm wrong, so be it. I'm not taking a shot at Paul Goldschmidt this year. If
No.
I'm taking a shot at a new New York Yankee, it's Cody Bellinger, and I'm not going to take a shot on Goldschmidt, though as well. I'm going to go worst value. I think Matt Olson. I don't like it. His ADP is 30 right now. In our league, that's a 3rd round pick. I'm not spending that on Matt Olson after the season he had last year. I'm happy if someone else wants to, for sure. His high is 26, his low is 34. I mean, I just can't do it. To me, that's not a good value for Matt Olson this year. Another value I don't like going into this season is let's see here. Now I lost this one too. Alec Baum. Again, I don't know if he's on ESPN. I had a hard time with looking these
he's
up.
just as the 3rd baseman.
Okay, so we won't talk about him then.
Okay.
Ryan Montcastle, he's probably more of a good value, I guess. He's down at 246. So there you go. I'll just give you one bad value today, and that's for me is Matt Olson at 30. I cannot spend my 30th pick overall in the draft on Matt Olson. I'm not comfortable with that. Some people are. I'm not. I don't like the value there picking him. Naylor, by the way, at 75. Walker at 78. They're right there in that same area. And Salvador Perez. We didn't talk about him at all today, Kevin. I always assume you're going to bring him up because you like him better than I do. But he's at 86 down there as well, behind Christian Walker, in front of Spencer Steer. So he's available there.
86, I like a little bit better value. I like him a lot, of course.
Yeah,
86.
But you're drafting him as your catcher spot, and
Right.
86 might be too high in that situation.
It is. I because he came off the board way later last year, and so his value was through the roof.
Yeah.
At 86, 9th round, I'm not taking him that high. I'm just not doing it.
All right, very good, very good. Well, next week on our show, we are ranking second baseman, and we're also previewing the American League East. So we'll start breaking down team by team in the American League East. We're looking at win totals. We're looking at the rosters, the lineups, the rotations, all that kind of stuff for each AL East team next week, as well as ranking second baseman. Kevin, talk to me about what's going on. I know you posted an article, I think today, about catchers. Where can we find it? What else you got going on this week?
Well, you can. I posted that article today. I wanted to do it last week, but I was not able to, given my work schedule. But I put it out this morning, and last I checked on Reddit, it had 13.7 thousand views already. And so I'm having some
the rankings over there on Reddit.
They do. And I'm having some very productive conversations on Reddit. I appreciate the guys over there in that baseball subcategory. They're very, very thoughtful individuals, and they're expressing some very good thoughts to me about the catchers. And I thought maybe they'd take me to the back of the woodshed, because like Tyler Stevenson I had in my top 10, but so far no one has mentioned that. And so I had guys asking me about the catcher there in Philadelphia.
Oh, JT Realmuto.
JT Realmuto, he's not in your top 10? No, he is not. We discussed him on our show and the reasons why I don't have him. So I just, everybody on Reddit, I applaud you. I appreciate you guys. And if you're not on Reddit, you can go straight to the Belly Up Sports channel over there, website, and my article's there. And so go ahead and check it out. And we talked about first baseman. You can relatively be sure that's will be coming out this week. And so, baseball is an exciting thing for me. And being on Reddit on baseball is an exciting thing for me. So I'm really looking forward to what we're going to be getting into in this area.
Awesome. Let's see here. So the plan is for next Sunday, we'll be back to talk more fantasy baseball. I've got a show coming out Wednesday night at 8:00 with my dad. We do a football show, not a fantasy football show, just a regular football show. We'll be recapping all the fun playoff games from this weekend and looking ahead to the Super Bowl as well, maybe getting some draft talk in there also. And then, like I said, next Sunday, we'll be back. Me and Kevin will be back to talk fantasy baseball. Until then, if you're looking for more content, again, bellyupsports.com, or you can check out our Twitter pages at Kevin62, WILSEA for Kevin Wilson, and at Sports Stove for me, Vince Stover, as well. Don't forget our sponsors over there, SeatGeek and Righteous Felon. Check them out. And shout out to everyone that tuned in during the live stream on the Belly Up Fantasy Facebook page and the Belly Up Sports Twitter account. And if you missed any of the episode, you can go back on the Belly Up Sports YouTube channel and check out the whole episode there, or wherever you get your podcast. The Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball Show is available to subscribe as well. Feel free to drop your thoughts on your rankings or where you thought we were right and wrong on our rankings, and come back next week ready to discuss second baseman and the American League East. Thank you for tuning into this edition of the Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball Show. Hey, dust off those cleats. Baseball season's right around the corner. We'll see you next week.